I loved it. Together was pretty fun. The Substance was fantastic. And I can't wait because Bring Her Back is finally getting a Mexican theatrical release, at the end of August. So I can't wait to finally see that movie in the big screen. But Jesus Christ, I gotta talk about Weapons, man. I just got out of the theater to watch my second favorite movie of the entire year, right under Ryan Coogler's Sinners. Weapons fucking rocks. I love this movie with a burning passion. So, I fucking loved Barbarian from a few years ago. I went into that movie completely blind. I just saw reviews talking about that movie saying how it was, fucking crazy. It was a great little horror movie, a nice twist on, a typical horror movie genre. All the, crazy, cliche bullshit that every movie reviewer says. And I was like, yeah, I guess I'll watch this movie. And I came out of that movie fucking howling. I loved Barbarian. And so, Chris Krieger, I'm actually going to Google his fucking name because he really, really deserves it. Mr. Krieger, I can't really remember. I think he's one of the guys from, the whitest group of kids you know. The whitest kids you know. Hold on. Some shit like that. It's been a while since I've seen this shit. Hold on. Let me take a look here. Weapons review. Well, not review. Director. 96% on Rotten Tomatoes, folks. Well deserved. Excellent fucking movie. I love the shit out of Zach Krieger. There you go. Zach Krieger. Jesus fucking Christ, this guy's amazing. Okay. So, this is exactly the kind of shit I like. I call it breadcrumb movies. Barbarian, Hereditary. It's mostly prevalent in the horror movie genre. Movies where you have no fucking idea what's going on until at least the halfway point when you have some grasp and impression of what the story is really about. And it all finally, comes together at the end. And you're like, holy shit, Those kinds of movies. Those movies. It's a modern horror movie trope to have breadcrumbs, like for instance Hereditary. You have no idea it's about a cult until like the very last 10 minutes, and it's been an hour and a half of building up to those reveals, and the whole movie finally makes sense in retrospective. And Barbarian is kind of like that, but in a different way. Instead of drip feeding you information to where it all makes sense at the end, it's an entire conclusion and context. But the film is split up in different areas, leading to little nuggets, instead of breadcrumbs, nuggets of information leading to the center. The movie, even in Barbarian, and it was also prevalent in Weapons, they're building up, 30 minutes of this character so they can get to this nugget. And then they stop talking about that, and then they start establishing a completely different subplot to lead you to a different nugget. So finally you can get to the final course meal, which is the actual full understanding and the bigger picture of what's really going on. And the latter alternative is much more engaging to me because, it's obviously, from a superficial perspective, it's like little individual movies, packed into one, but also it keeps you guessing even more. You're grasping, you're, pleading for air, wanting to understand what the fuck is going on. And the movie's constantly, cutting you off the knees. Here's your little nugget of information, but that's all you're going to get, motherfucker. You better keep watching the movie. And this movie, Barbarian did it 3 times, establishing, modern day context of what's happening at that house. Then a flashback of what was happening prior from another character's perspective, and then even another flashback years beforehand, giving you the actual resolution so you can understand what's going on. And Weapons pretty much does it, with, I think it was like 5 or 6 different characters. And each of them is so uniquely different, so interesting, and provides a different, very necessary, yet radically different alternative perspective to all the other perspectives in mind. Not one subplot is alike, which, by the way, I have a little tidbit about it. Alden Ehrenreich plays a cop in the film. His subplot is the only subplot that gives, an elaborate explanation that I feel really doesn't have that much significance to what's overall going on. It's more so, character development, which I appreciated, and I love Alden Ehrenreich. I thought, Jesus fucking Christ. Fuck Kathleen Kennedy, man. If you know, you know. He was robbed. He was a great Han Solo. But anyways, he was great in this movie. Julia Garner. Oh, I love her. Gorgeous as always. And she was amazing in this film. I loved her. She's pretty much, it really pissed me off, watching the movie's end credits and they put on they displayed Josh Brolin's first name. Well, Josh Brolin's name before Julia Garner's. And I was like, nah. Because Julia Garner is really the lead. She carries the entire movie when she's on screen. There's large chunks of this movie where she's pretty absent. But she's my favorite character easily out of the entire film. Favorite character easily. Josh Brolin, he did a good job. Pretty much did, the kind of performance that you would expect him to do as, a distressed dad. Alden Ehrenreich was great. I can't remember actually, I really liked his performance, so I'm going to look it up myself. There's this guy in this film. Let me check. Cast. Let me see. Benedict Wong was great. Austin Abrams as a character named James. Haven't seen him before. I'm definitely going to pay attention to that guy from here on out. Great performances. And the kids in this film. The kids in this film are great. Especially the main kid, Alex. Let me look up his name because he also deserves a shout out. Incredible. All right, Carrie Christopher. Incredible performance as Alex Lilly. I loved him. Weapons is a movie. It's exactly what I really needed today, especially today. I was having a pretty rough day, like I mentioned earlier. This was something that I needed. I loved it. I loved Weapons. This film is the equivalent of a film grabbing you by your balls and you're just gasping for release. It's like, please, I want to know what the fuck is going on. The filmmaking on display, the camera work, Jesus Christ. Horror is the best way to get into that industry, man, because it forces you to really think outside the box. There are camera movements, shots in this film that are going to take a pretty long time for me to forget about. There's a sequence in this film that has to do with a pair of scissors. That has to be one of the most memorable and creepy sequences I've ever experienced in a horror movie in quite some time. Awesome. I also didn't expect the movie to be as funny as it is. The movie's just like Barbarian, it's a mashup, it's a horror comedy, or it is a horror movie with a lot of comedic elements in it that don't really, detract from the overall genre. It's still very much a horror movie from beginning to the end. In terms of nitpicks that I have, there is one subplot, like I mentioned, regarding Alden Ehrenreich that I didn't really, feel it really added much to the overall plot when you really when you're watching the movie and you're really getting a good grasp of what's really going on in this world. In hindsight, the Alden Ehrenreich subplot merely is there for character development on his character. But the rest of the other characters have just as much character development as he has, and they have a much larger stake in the plot. If you'll see the movie, you'll know exactly what I mean, because his subplot kind of just leads to an explanation for something else that happens early in the film that doesn't really have that much to do with the main plot, which was kind of like, not disappointing. It didn't distract me. I liked his performance. I liked the scenes that were going on. Maybe in a rewatch, it'll grow on me. Who knows? Other nitpicks. The opening sequence, much like Together, both Together and also now Weapons, they have opening sequences that I wish were handled a little differently because they kind of, ruin a lot of the intrigue for the rest of the movie. In the opening sequence, it's not even a spoiler because it's already in the trailer. The movie opens showing you, home security footage of the kids, running with their hands, spread out, alongside a song playing in the background that kind of symbols a specific, lighthearted tone to those sequences of them running around, when the rest of the film are treating those sequences and that visual of the kids just running with their hands opened as something creepy, horrific, or petrifying for both the audience as well as the characters in universe. So for the film to already, blow its load, showing that because that was the shit that made the Weapons trailers viral. People were like, "What the fuck is going on with this movie? We gotta watch this movie." The film, the movie theater that I was in was packed. A lot of people were there. And I gotta, I remember, how hot that trailer was off the gate when, showing those, security camera footage of those kids, running. It's a really creepy, it kind of reminds me of, analog horror. It's like, it's uncanny because it's bizarre or out of place. It doesn't feel natural. It feels weird, especially throughout the course of the film where they repeatedly show that footage, but in, a fast forward kind of perspective. So it's just, them running super quickly and they're just running, past the camera and whatnot. It fucks you up kind of. But the film already establishes it in a very lighthearted manner in the opening sequence that kind of, if that sequence wasn't in the film and they would just be drip feeding you that powerful visual, that creepy ass visual of the kids running around in the middle of the night, it would enhance it more. You would feel like, oh my, it would make it feel more significant. You know what I mean? I love this movie. Love it to death. Easily a 9.5 out of 10. Well, 9 out of 10. There are certain, like I mentioned, my little tidbit was like, there are certain moments in the film where I feel like it would be edited, if it would be elevated slightly more, if maybe they, gave a little, another rewrite, tighten up some of the plot points again, because some of the plot points are longer than some others, which kind of hinders the pacing of the overall film a little bit. The film does feel long. It doesn't feel long as a detriment. It's not like a Michael Bay Transformers movie where you're just begging for it to end. It's more so like, okay, and, but then something really cool would happen. You would be like, what the fuck is going on, man? Excellent film. Loved it. Horror is fucking back, folks. And I couldn't be happier.